Hello, my name is Carla Fernandez. I'm here with my friend and classmate Marcel Grau, and we're going to kick off this discussion by first stating the facts of this case known as GRAU-RODRIGUEZ case, or commonly known as the monster with 21 faces case. It's just a bit of a breakdown of the events or incidents that make up this case. So starting off with the first event in this sequence or chronicles, one could say, of crimes, it's the Katsuhisa Izaki's kidnapping in March 18 of 1984, which occurred at around 9 p.m. when two men first broke into his mother's house next door to look and acquire a copy of the key to her son's house. They then proceeded to go into Mr. Izaki's house and kidnapped him. During the investigation, which started bright and early, right the next day, investigators swept the area and found a ransom of approximately 1 billion yen, which at the time was an equivalent of around 4.5 million US dollars, with a side of 100 kilograms of gold bullions for a total of approximately 6 million US dollars. Surprisingly, however, 3 days after his kidnapping, Katsuhisa was able to escape his captors. The second incident was the targeting of GLICO company per se, which started in April 10 of 1984 with the burning of some cars at GLICO headquarters. And 6 days later, we drop off, you could say, of a container of hydrochloric acid found at a GLICO building in the city of Ibaraki. They also left the first letter. They began taunting the company GLICO and the police and the press via these letters. One of these letters read, "To the stupid police. Are you idiots? If you were pros, you would catch us. Because you guys have such a high handicap, we're gonna give you some hints." And so in this letter, they also deemed themselves the monster with 21 faces, which is inspired by a villainous organization from an early 20th century series of Japanese detective novels. The letter alluded to the fact of having laced GLICO products with potassium cyanide, which is a toxic substance that, if properly administered, could result in potentially hundreds or thousands of deaths. And this had a profound effect on GLICO's economic stability and public image, with a loss of approximately $21 million. And of course, that was just initially. Later, a total of $130 million in losses. So for the next couple of weeks, they continued to extort GLICO with huge sums of money. And right as a result, GLICO was forced to pull all of its products from their store shelves. No stores were selling their candies. And in the meantime, a couple of weeks after the initial extortions and claims of poisoning, another fire on a GLICO company occurred, and another letter was received. They claimed the harassment would stop if a sum of $1.3 million was paid to the group, obviously in yen. And so this was sort of like a peace treaty. These weeks of extortion, there was a suspect recorded who was noted placing tainted GLICO candy on a shelf during the time which GLICO products were recalled and pulled off shelves, and they were just simply not being sold at the time. He couldn't be identified at the time because he was wearing a baseball cap which covered his face, but he was later sort of deemed as the videotaped man. So later on June 26 of 1984, the monster with 21 faces sent a letter to the press issuing what they called a peace treaty, having become, and I quote, "bored of this affair of harassing GLICO." The third event was the targeting of Muradai, which was yet another food company. It began a couple weeks prior to the peace treaty with GLICO, and on that very day that they offered the peace treaty to GLICO, they also offered to stop her as a Muradai if they paid a 50 million yen ransom. Then Muradai agreed to actually pay the ransom because, of course, with the ransom came the threat that if they didn't pay the ransom, they would also start suffering poisoning of their products. And so Muradai agreed to pay the ransom, and they were instructed exactly how to deliver the money 2 days later in a train headed from Osaka to Kyoto. The money was in a bag and was to be tossed out the window at the signal of a white flag. So the police dressed an officer as a Muradai employee and was on the lookout for the white flag. The signal never came. So the official also noticed a suspicious man who appeared to be watching him all throughout the train ride from Osaka to Kyoto, and he was also present in the ride from Kyoto back to Osaka. Later on, this man became known as the Fox-Eyed Man, and he became the main suspect and would reappear in another ransom drop-off location. So the fourth targeting, or the fourth event, was the targeting of Morinaga, another candy corporation. So the damages to Morinaga were so huge that it resulted in this case being known as the GLICO-Morinaga case. They resulted in roughly 60% dip in sales and a let go of nearly 450 employees. Not to mention that their stock fell so much that the government actually had to step in to encourage private investors to either buy Morinaga products or buy Morinaga stock. So the first letter to Morinaga demanded around 100 million yen in ransom. And interestingly, this first letter was laced with roughly 30 grams of sodium cyanide, which was, of course, a hint that, should they not pay the ransom, they would suffer the same consequences as GLICO. On October 1984, a letter sent to several news agencies addressed to, and I quote, moms across the nation, threatened to lace dozens of GLICO products with sodium cyanide. And this letter read, "To moms throughout Japan, in autumn, when appetites are strong, sweets are really delicious. When you think sweets, no matter what you say, it's Morinaga. We've added some special flavor, the flavor of potassium cyanide. It's a little bitter. It won't cause tooth decay, so buy the sweets for your kids. We've attached a note on these bitter sweets that they contain poison. We've put 20 boxes in stores from Hakata to Tokyo." I want to note that they actually said boxes, not just like packages, boxes of these products, okay? And so, of course, the police began scouting the stores in cities all across Japan and found over a dozen tainted items, packages of Morinaga choco balls and angel pies, placing them in stores in Osaka, Kyoto, and Nagoya. And, of course, at least 6 of the tainted items had roughly 0.2 grams of potassium cyanide, which is a lethal dose. Interestingly, Monster 21 Faces had actually labeled the tainted items with a typed note that read, "Danger, contains poison. You'll die if you eat this." In the coming weeks, Morinaga received a lot more letters, one of them with another thread of poisoning products, but this time they hinted that they would not be labeling the tainted packages of products. And so, of course, for months, these products were all quickly pulled off shelves and tested for cyanide. And not to mention, of course, that they were simply not sold in stores at all. And so in February of 1985, the police found even more laced Morinaga products in Osaka, Tokyo, Kyoto, and Aichi.
The fifth incident to be attributed to the monster with 21 faces is the incident regarding house foods that occurred in November of 1984. They received a letter, the same as the rest of the companies, and the letter was this time laced with a batch of poisoned curry. It just so happened to be the fact that house foods produced curry. This was sort of a warning. The monster with 21 faces wanted a ransom of approximately 100 million yen, and of course they hinted that if they did not meet these demands, they would poison just as they did before. After a week, House Foods agreed to pay the amount that was required, and they were instructed to deliver it to the city of Otsu on November 14. And once again, the location was to be marked with a white cloth, just as had happened before on the train incident. Officers had trailed the van used by the House Foods employees for a drop-off. The monster with 21 faces suddenly called off the operation by leaving the cloth on the ground. The fox-eyed man was spotted again in the area of the drop-off location, but again, he managed to escape without being detained, let alone identified. Before the operation had started, however, the police noticed a wagon that was in the area where the drop-off operation was to be proceeded. The officer that noticed was not involved in the operation, yet he confronted the suspicious van. The van suddenly turned on and slipped away, leaving no trace behind. They were not able to find it until a couple of days later, where they were actually able to identify that this van had been stolen some time before. These events led the police to theorize that the monster with 21 faces was not really interested in getting the money at all. They were just interested in testing the police and messing with them, seeing how they operated, observing their tactics, and maybe even planning for something more sinister. Another targeting followed shortly after. The targeting was specifically Fujiya in December of 1984, a Japanese and retail and restaurant chain. Part of the harassment included demanding that the company scatter money all over the rooftops of two skyscrapers in Tokyo and Osaka. This started to believe the theory that Monster with 21 Faces wasn't after the money. They were just in it to observe how people would react. Sometime after, the first official sketch of the fox-eyed man was released in January of 1985. With the additional officer insights from the second sighting, the police were finally able to get a sketch of the fox-eyed man and release it to the public. It was thought that this would help immensely in the operation, but time would tell that this was merely just another piece in the puzzle that never got resolved. Some time after, the monster with 21 faces got to it again. This time, they continued harassing Fujiya and then circled back to Morinaga. They started harassing two more companies, Heiji and Lotte, and just around Valentine's Day, the authorities feared a second wave of mass poisoning. There was massive hysteria on the streets, and people were frankly scared. The monster with 21 faces continued to elude the police into August of 1985. It was at this time that, after reaching heavy scrutiny and ridicule from the public, Shohei Yamamoto, the 59-year-old police superintendent that was in charge of the case, was relieved from his post. He had overseen the botched operation in the Shiga prefecture the prior November, when the driver of the stolen station wagon, the fox-eyed man presumably, had managed to elude officers under his command. On August 7th of 1985, just days after being removed from his position and reassigned, Shohei Yamamoto doused himself in kerosene in his backyard and lit himself on fire. He committed suicide by self-immolation. Just days later, on August 12, 1985, the monster with 21 faces sent their last known message to the media. The letter read, Yamamoto of the Shiga Prefecture Police has died. How stupid of him. We've got no friends or secret hiding place in Shiga. It's Yoshino or Shikata who should have died. What have they been doing for as long as 1 year and 5 months? Don't let bad guys like us get away with it. There are many more fools who want to copy us. No career, Yamamoto died like a man. So we decided to give our condolence. We decided to forget about torturing food-making companies. If anyone blackmail any one of the food-making companies, it's not us, but someone copying us. We are bad guys. That means we've got more to do other than bullying companies. It's fun to lead a bad man's life. Monster with 21 faces. And just like that, they were gone.
Okay, so now that we know the facts, let's talk about some theories. Carla, which one of the spicy theories is the one that you want to propose first?
I think that the political theory would be a nice one to kick off the discussion of possible.
This is like so weird because it seems like from the outside that there's no clear motive, so we're just kind of like grasping at straws.
Like there's either no clear motive or there's like a bit of a mashup of motives.
Right. But like from the outside, like it's no wonder they never were able to actually solve this, because you're just like, I imagine myself like sitting in the police department being like, oh, okay, so like, why are they doing this? And if you can't get down the why, you can't get down the who. Like, definitely. It's like pretty evident. But yeah, I think the political component here is pretty interesting. Specifically, the fact that when we say political, we probably mean like people who try to outmaneuver corporations, or just have like lower classes lashing out against these powerful corporations. Definitely,
like down with big corporations.
Yeah, because it definitely seems like it. Like, for example, like we saw that the corporations suffered, especially Glico suffered a bunch of financial. Yeah, they both suffered a bunch of
losses.
Exactly. So I think the political angle is one that is very enticing. I don't know how you would like elaborate on it, because honestly, it's like, okay, but then how would you then go and pinpoint a suspect, right? It had to be another one of the other theories. It's maybe someone that was an employee in one of these facilities.
I think there definitely had to be employees involved. I also think that it must have definitely been a group of people. More than likely, each person had a particular set of skills or knowledge that was definitely key to every single aspect of every single
because it's so weird. Like, they got into these facilities, and if we start like from the very beginning, they captured a man, so we would have to have like hired people that are able
not only that, but they knew exactly where to find the key. They went into Mr.
It's a hard name to pronounce. Don't worry about it. Let me just try not to.
Ezaki's
Ezaki. Exactly.
They went right into Mr. Katsuhisa Ezaki's mother's house. They knew she had a key. They got the key, and then they went into his house. So it wasn't even a breaking and entering, because they actually had access to the house.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like the first red flag. Like, so how did these people know all these things?
Definitely, it was either someone close, either a close employee or a close friend to the families.
And that's why there's this other theory that suggests that specifically that first incident, it's supposedly it could have been an inside job. Like, he was aware, because there's this other fact where they gave him clothes. He was able to escape.
Yeah. I heard that. Like clothes, snacks, juice. Like they kept him pretty comfortable.
Yeah, like I wouldn't mind being a prisoner, right? If you're there gonna give me like
Right.
clothes and food and then let me go, it's like, okay, sure, whatever. It sure is scary, but I mean, he was treated
There's definitely
very well.
worse situations. They did find him naked in his bathtub, so they could have definitely left him like that.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
And I think the political component is like comes back here again, because they didn't kill him or anything. They were just kind of like doing this for like chaos, right? It seems like they were just trying to mess with the system, if we will. And I think
just for the fun of it.
Exactly. And that's
and just
another
to watch the chaos unfold.
Right. And that was like just another going into another theory. What do you think about like them just like being a Joker type of character? They just want to see the world burn. Like,
I think, and that's why I think it was maybe a mix of motives.
right.
Because I suppose that the Joker is also sort of like a political
Yeah, exactly.
issue, right?
True.
But definitely, yeah, I think it must have been, because at the end of the day, they never really collected any of the ransom money.
Exactly. And the other thing that like points to them just like messing around and wanting to see everything burn is like
the taunting letters.
Yeah, exactly. They're just like, hey, you're stupid. You can't do
You're
you can't catch us.
handicapped.
You know what? We're gonna give you some
I'll
clues.
give you hints.
Exactly. Like, I bet you won't catch us, and it worked.
And effectively, they didn't.
Exactly. Yeah.
catch.
It's kind of crazy. Like, I don't want to throw too much shade to Puerto Rico, but I think that could
Right.
happen
No,
here.
definitely.
But specifically in Japan in those times, like, I saw statistics that said like they solved like 70% of murder cases.
Yeah. Japan has a really great statistics of solving their crimes. So
Exactly.
this was
So
like.
It's like even more surprising that they failed so miserably.
Yeah,
to,
and I
like,
mean,
catch
I guess
these people.
that's definitely a reason for one of the I believe it was one of the officers involved in the case. He was removed from the case and reassigned.
Yeah,
and he actually killed himself.
Yeah, that was when we were researching the case. That was like when this got like really serious, because to that point, like, there was no damage, right? There were no casualties to that point, but then it was like, oh, that's dark.
Okay.
Yeah,
it was definitely a shocker. I was not expecting that, honestly.
And I think like that, talking about that specific instance, I think that actually points to the fact that they were just like in it maybe just for the lulz, or beyond that, just politically.
Yeah, that trolling.
After he killed himself, they sent their last letter, and they weren't heard from again. So it was like, it almost seems like a Robin Hood type of figure, right? Where they were just messing with these huge corporations,
right? And they wanted to see how far the police would get,
exactly,
right? And how much stress they could get. And
it gives me that vibe. I see it like they were trying to push it to the extreme, but they pushed it a bit too far, and then they were like, "Oh, okay, we got to stop now." But that was for sure one of the darkest.
And even then, they didn't get caught. That was the most amazing, which brings me back to the point that definitely part of the people involved had to be some sort of police officer or former investigator, or somebody from the
somebody
from authorities,
an
authority figure.
It's so weird, and I think that could be supported by one of the theories that there was this incident in the 1950s, I believe, where these companies were involved in having like actual poison be in milk, and this affected a bunch of kids.
I think it was arsenic, was it?
Yeah, I think it was arsenic.
In baby formula. Milk.
Exactly. So that leads to this other theory where it said that like these people were coordinating these attacks.
Grown-up people.
In sort of like revenge,
get
right?
Back to the company.
Exactly.
But that would be only from Glico Milk. The other companies, I believe, were not involved.
Yeah, exactly.
So why target other companies? Maybe perhaps to like throw off the authorities, not make it seem like it was just Glico.
Yeah, maybe. But I think
that they really went all out.
That really points out to like what you said earlier, like there's a bunch of things like coalescing here. It's not just, I think there's not one motive or at least one clear motive. I think it could have been that revenge plot from the milk issue, and maybe that of course becomes something political, and then it just keeps snowballing, and then we get the situation where it's like really hard to just pinpoint a clear motive.
Definitely.
It's very weird. Another theory that I didn't see it online, but I kind of thought about it. It could be that like a case of like corporation versus corporation sabotage. I don't think this is supported by anything, but I'm just throwing it out there. Like it could have also happened, and it actually could be supported by the fact that these corporations usually get away with a lot of crimes that are never reported because they have just so much money they could bribe everyone. So the fact that they were never caught, it kind of almost seems like maybe corporations were trying to damage each other.
Like considering at the time, Morinaga was probably the biggest sweets confectioners at the time. Perhaps Morinaga saw Glico as a bit of a threat, and who knows? Maybe they started off by stalking his mother. That way, they could get around knowing about the key, or sending an undercover employee to get close to them,
that
figure out about
work.
the key,
like they have a lot
and
of
then
employees.
Kidnap him, keep him comfortable.
It could definitely work.
And then Glico strikes back.
The thing that wouldn't cut it for me is like the letters would be kind of off-putting,
This is true. Yeah.
I don't know exactly
the letters.
Yeah, exactly. Which company would just like be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna mess around with the police. That would be very weird.
Right? Yeah.
So I think that's where it falls off. But it from the outside looking in, it could seem like that.
It could. It could, if you don't really focus on the whole letters taunting the police.
Yeah, exactly.
It could.
It also, the letters, I want to talk about that. I can't speak. I want to talk about that for like a second. Like, what's with criminals and letters, right? We saw it with the Zodiac, like taunting the police. What is it with criminals and letters? Is it just a case of a psychopath, or is it?
It could be. It could be just like them knowing the thrill of them blatantly writing to the authorities, right?
Yeah, and it got so much publication, right? So it became like a big issue. They gave them even
rises more. Like
exactly. It's a situation where like they get what they want specifically. They get the attention that they want.
Yep, and they don't get caught.
Exactly. I don't know if it. Do you think like these letters were like written by a committee? If we're going with the theory that it was like a bunch of people, or do you think there was like, let's say that there's the 21 guys and there's just one guy who's crazy and insane, and he just sends all the letters to the police? What do you think? Do you think it was like a coordinated effort, or do you think?
I always sort of pictured them, like around one guy with the typer, and them all just sort of chipping in a little bit here and there. But it would be really funny if it had been just this one guy.
This one guy in the corner
sending out letters.
and then imagine like they don't know at all, like it's happening, and then they just wake up one day and it's all over the news. Like,
it's all over 21 the news,
Faces sends letters to the police, and they're like, "What? What are you doing? We're gonna get caught."
And they're like, "All right."
That would be crazy.
Oh god.
So now that we're like talking about like the perpetrators, do you think it's just like one guy? Or do you think it's definitely? I think we already covered this, but you definitely think it's more than one person, right? It's
impossible to have it been just one person,
right? And
it could have been just one person. That could have been like the mastermind, searching out the people with the particular skills that he wanted, and planning out everything.
But I agree. I don't think it could have been one guy.
It's very difficult to have it been just one person because. Again, these people had access to. It wasn't just like one package, just loose packages. It was boxes of tainted items. So this means they were. They were really deep inside the factories, inside the confectionery process, the packaging process, because they also labeled them. So there had to be someone in the packaging process labeling.
I think
now that having no one else.
Now that you're actually mentioning this, I think another possible theory is just like employees from a specific company who just unionized and like did this in a way to protest against like maybe like low wages or something like that. I could definitely see that happening. Although, again,
maybe
the letters,
not low wages.
The letters kind
I
of just...
do, however, know that Japan's like known for. So there's this word called karoshi, which literally means death by overworking.
Oh, yeah.
So this is something that arose right after World War II, in which Japan, as it says in a lot of these articles that we found, was flourishing economically, right? Like picking themselves up back from the ashes after World War II. And so I think that this perhaps overworking,
it definitely could lead to a situation where employees would lash out.
People just lashing out, really mad, and so they sort of unionized.
I think where it falls off, I think we could make a lot of
taking into consideration that historical information and putting it into the situation. I think it could definitely have been a group of employees from different companies, sick and tired of being overworked.
That would explain. That would also serve like an explanation of why they were never caught, specifically if they're like a coordinated group of different companies. But I think where it might fall off is the letters. I guess the letters are just like the breaking point for me.
I don't know. I don't think so, because they could have also, I don't think Japan's they were really a dumb people, considering, again, they never got caught. They never left any evidence behind. Not even at the warehouse. There weren't any wrapping papers. There weren't any food bottles. Nothing. So I think they knew what they were doing. They had some sort of experience with the police, or maybe they hired a personal investigator to help them.
They just bribed this one guy.
Another possibility was that I think it's also very likely, coming back to the fox-eyed man, I think it's very likely that they could have paid him to watch over these drop-off locations.
Right, definitely. We were like talking a bit before, like maybe like
I don't think maybe he wasn't actually part of the group.
Exactly. Maybe they just like used him as a decoy of sorts.
Yeah.
To kind of like lead the law away from what was actually going on.
Pitched in to pay him enough so that he would take the job.
And he said like, okay, I'll just publish a book afterwards and make all that money back.
Yeah, and then use my portrait,
the mugshot, the portrait as like the cover. Like I'm totally not guilty. So yeah, that kind of leads to, like, do you think the fox-eyed man was like the mastermind here, or you just said like you thought he was a decoy, but do you think there could be a chance where he would be like the organizer here, or do you think he's just a pawn in the machine, sort of way?
I think he might have been just a pawn,
right?
Or because also I know you probably mentioned before that he did in fact have an issue with Glico about 10 years prior to this incident. So maybe he was willing to comply with the offer that the group made him to help them with the surveillance of the drop-off locations.
Yeah, I definitely do think he was just a pawn, because like looking back on it, it would be weird like to have like your head honcho going out there and be exposed.
He could have even helped with the whole avoiding the police thing, because he was a yakuza, or at least the son of a yakuza. So these people, even though they're a organized crime sort of gangster culture.
It's definitely the mafia culture.
I think it's definitely likely that he could have helped in avoiding the police too. He could have helped with the acquiring the police radio that they found inside the car in Osaka. So I think he kind of fits in with certain things. Maybe not like intrinsically part of the group, but he certainly could have helped.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. But again, this just like goes to this crazy notion that they were like just so experienced in avoiding any possible implications with the police, which points to like criminal background. But they also were like kind of noble in the way that the candies that were tainted were like marked with it said like poison, do not eat. So it was like, these guys bad, or are these guys not bad? It's a weird like moral
because they even like the second time they when they did the second letter addressing the moms, that they were gonna basically keep putting candy, that they said that they weren't gonna label them this time, but in fact they did.
So it points to
the
this
police
fact
found the labeled bags.
it points to the fact like they were probably not doing it to kill people. And again, this goes all the way to the end
right,
of the
like
case.
It wasn't to hurt the public. They
exactly.
did not want to hurt the public. They wanted to hurt
so it definitely
the
points
police,
to
and they
an
wanted to
ulterior
hurt
motive.
The corporations.
Definitely. I think the thing that holds up the most is definitely lashing out against these corporations in a kind of Robin Hood-esque type of way. But again, they never got the money, right? They never did anything with it.
But then it doesn't matter because the companies did lose a lot more than what they were asking for.
Yeah, so it definitely seems like it was some sort of political movement or statement that was somehow so spectacularly orchestrated that to this day we have no idea who was at the head of it, who was remote involved. Like there is
suspect, even the fox-eyed man who was also previously known as the videotape man, because their portraits matched. Even him, they sort of, it just fell off, any charges. He had a solid alibi for both of the nights of his sightings.
Yeah, it's just like really hard. It was really hard to like just get a guy down and get him to talk or anything like that. It was very weird, a very weird case. And that's like one of the reasons when I saw it, I sent it to you and I was like, we've got to do this one because it's so weird. Because usually like there's a murder or something and there are like specific clues you can point to, but there's like nothing here.
There's nothing here. Literally, there's nothing.
And it's so frustrating that we can't
I don't even think they got anything off the labels that they found on the tainted candy and products.
No, definitely. It was so weird. I mean, like, this was in the 80s, so I'm not sure. God, no, they couldn't have like HD cameras or anything. Well, they had cameras, but not like very good cameras that could help or anything. Exactly.
And we saw that with the videotape man.
Yeah, the videotape man. It's crazy. It's crazy.
The video was just really bad. But I think also technology plays a role here. And maybe had this happened nowadays, especially since Japan has very advanced technology, I think maybe that wouldn't have worked in these
I think it'd be
10 years.
Definitely harder to do something like this right now because especially these companies have like crazy security these days. Like for example, like Amazon records everything 24/7. All their employees are under surveillance when they work.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Exactly. So like these companies are like so tight knit that I just can't see this happening in the 21st century.
You could definitely not miss your employees.
Right, and there's also so many tools that you could use right now. You could probably track the chemicals and then like track where they were bought and all of these things that didn't happen back then, which maybe they had the technology, and if they did have the technology, then that pretty much corroborates our theory that maybe the police was in on it, right? And they didn't do
helping
these like
cover their tracks.
Exactly, because you would
I seriously doubt that they had like
me too.
I mean not the money, the technology.
But if they did, it would be very sus. It'd be very weird.
Yeah, very, very sus indeed.
But yeah, overall, what do you think? Like, if we have to wrap up like a main theory, what do you think happened here?
I think I liked the theory about the employees joining up and just lashing up because thinking about it in the end, it's the one that makes the most sense.
I agree.
Because how do you get inside every single one of these companies and taint? Because it wasn't just Glico and Morinaga. We also have House Foods, I think it was, that they had a poison batch of curry too. And so, it makes you think like, how can
I think it
then and it had to be different people because if not, the police would have seen the registration of employees and see, oh, this employee has been consistently in all of these companies.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it would be possible for a group of people to like just go from one company to the other and go unnoticed. I think it definitely would have been something that was coordinated between different employees of different companies because I don't see a way that they could just go unnoticed unless there's like no ledgers for like people don't have to notify their bosses when they come in and out. You know what I mean? It'd be very weird.
Yeah.
They could do it at night, I guess, but they would still need access. So it points to like someone knowing someone on the inside, and who better than employees who are angry at their bosses for low wages and long work hours,
And
it's a situation that we kind of still have. So, but hopefully people don't poison candy this time around. They could do it in a more civilized way. But I think I agree completely with that theory. It's the one that makes most sense given like the historical background and what's still going on, frankly. So I think that helps like kind of explain why they never were able to get one guy. But there is still so much going on here that we can't possibly explain. We could theorize.
And it's not like there's any new information coming in because all the charges were dropped, the investigation was closed because they were caught due to the what was it called again?
The statute of limitations.
The statute of limitations.
Yeah.
So this literally, it's not like one of those cases in the United States in which eventually 20 years later it gets resolved. No, this has been going.
This is pretty much dead.
This is the end of it. This is pretty much it.
And it's kind of unfortunate because it's actually kind of very interesting. Not just from a crime angle, but like from a political manifestation in point of view. It's also like very insightful into what was probably going on in that point in time in Japan.
Exactly.
But it's super crazy, and I hope that we have done like a good job at presenting the facts and then trying to do our best. We are not detectives, although now we might be kind of detectives. Are we kind of detectives, Carla? I don't know.
Amateur detectives?
Amateur detectives. I can't promise you I'll try to solve any other cases, but given our track record so far, we're like 0-1. We lost our first case.
I think everyone did. This case, I think everybody lost this case.
I agree. We're no Sherlocks. But I think I agree completely. And I don't know if you have like something else that you would want to add here that you think we left out in our conversation. Do you think you need to add something else, or do you think we've done our best?
We covered, pretty much everything. And if I think one of the most interesting things about this case was definitely the letters. They were definitely captivating, very much like the Zodiac case,
and probably also inspired by, right? Because Zodiac was before, so maybe they were inspired by the Zodiac,
Could
and
be.
they saw all the media attention that he got from these letters, so they maybe said, "Oh, let's do the same thing and get like people to pay attention to our cause and see all the damage that we're causing to these companies."
That's actually pretty.
Right, it really holds up because if you think about the name, the monster with 21 faces, it's actually based on a crime story. So we're talking about people that were aware at least of other crimes and maybe serial killers. So it would make sense that they used it as a template of operation, sort of. You know what I mean? But it's a very crazy situation, and unfortunately, we'll never get to the bottom of it. But maybe the internet will one day. Maybe one guy makes a YouTube video.
Maybe the last surviving person of the group will one day come forward
and be like, "I was the crazy guy writing
letters." Me and like 20 more guys.
Oh, that'd be hilarious. We kind of did this thing, remember? No? Okay.
Oh god, I think by then maybe no one from the original case investigating it might not be alive anymore. But it'd be pretty funny. If someone just came out of the blue, just the last survivor of the monster with 21 faces, and go like, "Hey,
it was me.
It was me."
It'd be pretty funny. And like, "Hey, corporations, I like Pokey, but or Pocky, I don't know how you pronounce it, but hey, it was me." It was me. But I think that's everything. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. So goodbye.